Okay, good. So we're covering contemporary painters from India, artists from India today.
Neat.
So here's the artists. We'll get through most of these today. 10 contemporary painters of India you need to know. Everybody see that? Zarina Atul Dodia, Sheeta Gadwa. Some of them live in America and or UK. Some are in India. Bharti Kher, Nico Chopra, Jitish Galat, I guess. Sheila Gupta, who's very well known. I'm gonna start with this guy. He's really far out. Rakib Shaw, and I didn't get anything on these last two because I fill up all the time with the first 8. So let's do Rakib Shaw, the last one first. I just was on preparing him this morning. He's really guy's really out there with his work. See, there you go. There's a little bit of a Wikipedia entry about him. He's from London, I believe. There's so many well-known contemporary Indian artists. They're really making names for themselves. Some of them study in India. Some of them, go to art school in London or the States and move back to India. Some of them stay on in the country they're in. He was born in 1974. He's London-based. Okay, he's known for his opulent, intricately detailed paintings, and you'll see, of imagined paradises inlaid with vibrantly colored jewels and enamel. His paintings and sculptures evoke the work of old masters such as Holbein and Hieronymus Bosch. You can see some Bosch in it, while drawing on multifarious sources from mythology, religion, to poetry, literature, art, etc., history, textile, and decorative arts. And his real character. He was born in Calcutta. He spent his formative years in Kashmir, and then he left Kashmir due to political arrest. The family did, and went to Delhi. And I guess then he went to art school in London, and he stayed on it. Okay. He's quite a character, you'll see. I probably like him. I saw him. Escapes of Kashmir, that's where he lived. And there's a video here I want to show. His works reveal an eclectic fusion of influences from Persian carpets and Northern Renaissance paintings to industrial materials and Japanese lacquerware. So very complex. Where's the video? Here it is.
It's a very daring picture. It's so sweet and idealized.
It is extremely sweet. It's extremely idealized. I mean, I think that any painter who would paint a painting like this in our day and age would be absolutely assassinated for painting something like this. We start off with innocence and beauty, and there is cherry blossoms, there is almond blossoms, there is a teeny bit of that peach blossom, and everything's lovely and everything's fabulous, and everything seems to be going rather well. And then we move on to summer.
That's it.
You see Icarus used as the metaphor for youth, and of course he is from Lord Leighton's Icarus painting. He is about to take off, he's about to fly, and there is all these musicians around him, his sort of entourage, people that are encouraging him to be intoxicated and then take the leap and fly away into the abyss and consequently, of course, fall. It's that moment that childhood is giving way to youth, and of course you see the ideal body and he's ready to fly, but on the horizon there are beginning of those clouds which in a way is an indication of what is to follow. These are clouds of melancholy.
We've discussed before, I think these works fit into the mentality of Dubuffet more than the mentality of Rothko, so to speak. You know, these different polarities in art of the last 100 years. The intensity of making this is really like the intensity of obsessive outsider art.
It's very obsessive, but through that, it's almost like meditation. Very much like the shamans would beat a drum to go on to another level of consciousness. It's that repetition, and it's that constant repetition that transports you to another world.
It's very challenging to just decide to do the 4 seasons. It's been done in history.
And Bruegel did it very, very beautifully, as we know.
And in modern times, Johns. But very few people have been able to touch it because it has so much history around it.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that you've incorporated so many other paintings.
Yes.
It goes back to your fascination with the Renaissance.
You can let the spring painting be, and you can enjoy the spring painting, and you can enjoy the sweetness and the Walt Disney nature of the spring painting, because I'm sure that we all feel that we live in that Walt Disney world, and then we go through these phases, and we end up here.
Well, it's not a great prophecy.
You have to be quiet mentally, and you have to really look at them. The more you look, the more you're rewarded. For example, these little tea lights that have been knocked over by the peacock. Then, of course, you have the monkeys, and they're carrying these mirrors, and they're looking at themselves. So it's
Well, just the plate of fruit is
Arnie,
somebody else's entire painting.
Because Arnie, the thing is that with all these paintings, they do need time, and the more time you give them, the more they will reveal themselves to you and invite you and take you to their world.
New York a couple years ago. So here's one of him. Let's see.
So that was Rakib talking about his painting.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here's another one. Talking about his, this is in his studio. And he goes in more detail about how he creates them. He's got a whole team of people. Good, man.
My God.
Hey, Joe, would he be considered a realist, a surrealist?
That? Look.
Say that again. I didn't, that was all broken up. Say that again.
Is he a surrealist?
Yes and no. He's surreal.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I don't think you can put him into one category.
I love him.
Surreal. You could say he is, but he's I don't think it's just that. You'll see.
Yeah. Wow.
My God, I thought I was a child. This place is weird. What the fuck is that? Look. Do you see what I have to deal with? Look at that. I tell you, the people here are crazy. Can you imagine what I have to deal with?
One of his team members put that doll in there and surprised him.
I was lucky enough to get them from Dr. Raymond Sawyer, who died a few years ago. He was one of the greatest ornithologists.
That's his collection of bonsai trees. They're amazing.
House in the country was full of the most exotic birds and plants, and so this group is a very, very lovely find, which I was lucky enough to have. It's not a good idea to have an active social life, and especially no holidays. You go on holiday, you come back, the bonsais are gone. They're extremely, extremely sensitive. For example, if someone else waters them, they don't like it, so I have to make sure that I water them and do the little bits of pruning and looking after. But they say in the bonsai world, until you don't kill your first bonsai, you can never be on the road to becoming a bonsai master. It's impossible. This one is the Kimura. It's a Kimura bonsai. It's the oldest one here. I started working for my family when I was, I would imagine 17. And it was a wonderful experience because they used to deal in carpets and jewels and blah, blah, blah. And I was very happily on my way to becoming, well, I would imagine a glorified salesman of sorts. I went to the National Gallery for the very, very first time. I saw the Holbein painting there, and then I thought to myself, instead of engaging in commerce or making money, it's so much better that to paint, because after you die, at least someone years later might like your shit and might be inspired by it. And I think that's so much better. No? Until about 3 years ago, we only used to have the hammerite. And this is the paint mixing room. So you would have the weak and strong hammerite, which is sort of the usual hammerite, which only comes in about 3 or 4 shades, which are not really great shades because you don't really get the depth and the variety of color. But then on the internet, we found this a machine that no one really wanted to use, and it's absolutely, it's an antique. You don't get any of these anywhere. So these, and with mediums, and it's absolutely primitive, but it works brilliantly. So this machine enabled me to make my own paints, and so we make our own paints here, like you can see. They do have, some of them do have sort of rather funny names, but please don't. It's the kids here being naughty. I wanted to find a medium that I could work with and try to develop over a certain amount of time, and I just want to see where it would all lead to, and that was about 20 odd years ago. And it's that journey of 4 primary, really hideous hammerite paints to this. I would say that it all starts with the drawings. For example, this is the Cranach for the Scottish National Gallery, that one over there. So there was a photo shoot for that painting where I was posing as the protagonist, and the result was this drawing here. And this is translated onto board. I would say that, yes, drawings are the absolute backbone of the practice. So if you imagine that Cranach painting, the Cranach drawing that you just saw, so that comes into, translated onto acetates, and then the acetates are projected onto the surface of the paintings here. So you see there is I mean, this one is finished in terms of the composition, but for example, as you can see, that there's the bird cage, so there's a bird cage here. If I want it bigger, it can be bigger. If I want it smaller, it can be smaller, you see? So it gives a lot of freedom when the paintings are being composed, and saves a lot of time. I have to make sure that there is enough detail, but not too much detail that can be translated into a line drawing with the stained glass liner. So each one of these sections lined with the liner, and paint is poured into each and every single section so that it doesn't go into the other bits, if you see what I mean. So each and every single bit of drawing is almost entombed and walled in, and then the paint is poured. Should we go to see the second level? This is, as you can see, a painting in progress, and now what has happened is, and it's, I think, interesting to see, for example, here, you can see here, and I can show you how it's all done. So over here, now, we have what is basically foliage, and this is a bit of a tree. So next to the lighter leaf, of course, there's going to be a slightly darker one. I need a tinge of yellow. my lovely team here, and I think that this atelier is something absolutely incredible, have been with me for 10 years, 12 years, because it takes that amount of time as a journey to be able to come here. That element of, as one might call it, craft or making, is, I think, it's that, taking it to an absolute crazy romantic extreme, and really, I always want to see how these things implode or how they explode. I really don't know. I work on a number of paintings, and so this one has been, the drawing for this dates back to, God, 3.5 years. And this has been, well, being painted and worked on now for, I would say, 2.5 years. Yeah. Lovely things happen. So because I always do feel that it's lovely to have the painting studio next to the yoga room. It's all sort of, good energy, I think. Hope it is. So it's very peaceful in here. I presume a single man of no consequence, an old single man of no consequence, doesn't really have much to do in life than meditate and paint and all that kind of shit. No? Phileas, let's go, Philly. Psst, psst. When I came to the sausage factory first, it was an absolute derelict dump. And no one wanted it, and it was raining outside, it was raining inside, and look how fabulous. When I first came in, isn't that wonderful that you have the shard over there? So this is a painting of Machetto, and this is this is basically a portrait in the sculpture studio next door. Now, next door has been a painting studio only for about 2 years, because all the painting used to be downstairs. That used to be the sculpture studio, and as you can see, that is me creeping from the corner, and this was actually 100% the way the studio looked, except for, of course, the floor. In terms of, it was just a plain floor, but all these splatters and all these things, they're all life studies from the debris around the studio. As you can see, the protagonist is, in a way, trapped within the confines of the so-called studio. Because I come from Kashmir, and I grew up in India, and I grew up with all these, sort of colors and objects, and that, of course, will come into the work. Whether these paintings are good, whether they're bad, I don't think that no one really knows. I think we'll have to wait for another 100 years to see that if they are really any good, and unfortunately, we'll all be dead by then. And even now, there is quite a lot of this thing of, it's decorative art, figurative art, blah-de-blah, whatever it is. But whatever it is, it's my life, and that's all I can do. And I feel that when I look at the first painting and the one we were looking at earlier, I think that it's a sort of an okay justification for a life, no?
Well, I think so. It's pretty amazing. You don't see paintings like that today, that degree of complexity, detail. And, what a huge studio, a whole former sausage factory, this one room after another. So, must be
So
doing
do you ever feel jealous when you see such a big atelier for an artist?
Yeah, definitely.
I would if I were you. All that rum.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But his work sells for hundreds of thousands. He's
Really?
Yeah, he's very successful.
Wow.
How common is it for an artist to have the assistants working? I mean, this looks very Renaissance-like to me, but
The famous ones, the most financially successful ones do. Here's another one. I'll skip around here. And I covered this person a year and a half ago, Anish Kapoor. Some of you remember, but he's one of the most successful painters alive. And I really like his work, sculpture, mostly sculpture, but he's got a huge team working for him because he works in really large, and he lives in London. And I've seen his work in DC, and I really like his work. So Anish Kapoor, let's just go to him. So the answer is the more successful ones, even Americans, they'll have the ones who work big. Oftentimes they'll have it. They can when they hit it big, they'll have they have a team of people, and it is like Renaissance in a way. They have a that's where I saw his work first at the Hirshhorn, and
This is a work called My Red Homeland. It's red wax, oil paint mixed with wax. I felt I'd use color in various different ways, but I hadn't used it in its most traditional form, which was oil paint. So I made this big machine that it's a block that slowly moves through the object, just slowly churns like that, moves very slow. So somewhere between a kind of geology and a kind of biology. One can't look at color without associative realities. And when it's red like this, then it's all the things you know. So I continue to explore this in different ways. This is a group of objects that are based on the principle, the very old idea of sculpture, that you take a two-dimensional form, a two-dimensional diagram, and move it through space, and it becomes a three-dimensional thing. So these are all objects that come out of that process. I began to wonder, could one use the space in a different way? Could one use the space to make the object, rather than putting an object in a space and moving something like a wall or a former or whatever? So I made this thing, which is, it's as if, yes, I'll explain. So it's a work called Swayam, which is a Sanskrit word meaning self-made or auto-generated. One of the fictions about a pigment object is that it made itself. I didn't make it. It just was there. So if one takes that really seriously, can one set up something? Of course, it's all lies. It's all fiction anyway. But can one set up a fiction that says the object made itself? So what I did was cast a block of wax and set it on rails and move it through the building. And it takes the form of the doors. It's as if the building is kind of, forgive the phrase, but shitting this thing, pushing it out, forcing it. Then where negative space becomes positive space, where the object is in transition, it's happening, it's taking place. It's in passage. If I go, to this one, I showed this at the Haus der Kunst in Munich, the building in which Hitler did whatever he did, banned anything that was progressive and forward-thinking. And of course, it immediately took on this whole other meaning. A thing, a train, I won't go into it further. But I was interested and appalled in a way that at the way that an object can accrue to itself this kind of deep psychic memory.
That's just one aspect. Let's see what else I can.
It doesn't matter how fast you are. It doesn't matter if you are going to walk the entire time. We got you.
So where did that artist, where was he at? He was in England too?
Based in London, also.
Okay.
Yeah. He's another one with a massive studio and team of people working for him.
Yeah.
He does a lot of sculpture, outdoor sculpture. Fascinated by the color red. There's a famous painting by Rembrandt on a big slab of beef, red, this raw red beef hanging from a wall. I think he took off on that. Split into like a fish to find. Ooh, look at that. Let's see, get one in a studio.
You see, the world has changed. You don't need to sell.
Joe, what was that material? Was that paint or plastic or what?
Wax and paint. It's a combination. It's good. And then the paintings on the wall, I'm not sure what he was using, but the three-dimensional objects that are red like that, this wax and red paint. Look at that big thing.
He designed the Orbit Tower in the Olympic Park, has exhibited in Tate Modern's Turbine Hall, and just made a Gangnam-style video in support of human rights and the Chinese artist Ai Weiwei. The Turner Prize-winning sculptor Anish Kapoor sells his work for millions around the world.
Yeah, I saw that at this one in the background. I saw that at the Hirshhorn, and it's real. It's amazing. It just takes you into infinity. Just subtle shades of black that just goes on. If you just stand in front of it, for the longer you stand in it, the more you get lost in it. It just goes on forever. And so that was the first time I've seen anything by him. It's just and that he later said he just was exploring the whole experience of trying to create the experience of infinity in an object. And yeah.
Sprawling studio in South London, and he's given our culture editor Matthew Kane an exclusive tour.
You know, the studio is in a way a place of experimentation. No, more than in a way, it is a place of experimentation. It isn't a factory. It's about kind of allowing things to emerge. There's one here, in fact, which is the beginnings of an idea for a new waxwork.
With so much depending on interaction with the viewer, how do you know whether a piece like this is ultimately going to work?
You don't.
Until?
You don't. The whole point, in a way, of any work that properly involves the viewer is that you can't enact it until you make it for real.
Anish Kapoor creates work on a variety of scales and using a variety of materials. His studio in South London is based in a former shutter factory. Each adjoining warehouse is now dedicated to a different area of his practice.
Let's just go in here for a sec. It's a spray, this is a spray booth, and a work just ready to be painted. What I'm after is not dissimilar to what's happening there now, even though it's grey. It is a kind of inner reflective condition. It's one, you know, when you close your eyes and sit quietly, you kind of know that dark space in yourself.
And do you think a figurative piece could do the same thing, or is it only abstract art that has the ability to do this?
I'm interested in abstract art because I think its route to meaning is much more poetic.
Working with Anish Kapoor are a total staff of 20, many of them studio assistants. These provide technical expertise for his work with materials such as cement. What did you make of David Hockney's comments earlier this year when he had a go at Damien Hirst for relying so heavily on assistants? Because presumably for the technical knowledge you really need to rely on the expertise of yours.
Look, I think this is a kind of, in a way, I think a ridiculous point. Artists, if I don't know, Michelangelo is a possible example. All the artists of the Renaissance had many assistants. It depends on what you're trying to do. David, bless him, is a painter. Painters just don't need assistants in the same way that sculptors do. You know, I've been making mirror pieces, mirror works for quite a while. Perceptually, they are very confusing. It's as if one's looking at space kind of tumbling into itself.
You're interesting as an artist in that your work equally appeals to the art world and the general public. Do you have a particular kind of viewer that you're more concerned with communicating with?
You know, in the art world, traditionally, we are suspicious of the so-called, of popularity, of the so-called big public. But I think one can do both, and one, you know, that's in a way the job.
But at the same time, you do acknowledge that there are dangers inherent in trying to communicate to a wide public.
Inevitably. There is, you know, Disneyland is just a short distance away. So I think there is this difference in a way between a serious intent and an intent that points towards entertainment.
The final room in Anish Kapoor's studio is a gallery space where finished work can be viewed. I think if I were really sad and I were looking at this, it would accentuate my sadness. But today I'm quite happy, and it feels to me like a happy piece.
So therefore I think what you're saying is that maybe it's not possible or necessary to put those kinds of subtle feelings into words. That what one says is that you register that there's something going on, but you can't quite name it. I think that not being able to name it properly or adequately.
You ever get a chance to see
that what one says is that you
this work, it's really profound. It just goes on.
saying is that maybe it's not possible or necessary to put those kinds of.
So yeah, he's one of the most financially successful artists in the world. So he can afford a studio like this and assistants. Here's this. He's got that famous sculpture in reflecting sculpture in Chicago. And this one, it's called The Bean. If you've been to Chicago, you may have seen it.
You're at Disneyland with the kids. It starts getting hot. They take all their hoodies off and throw them your...
It's emotional, strange for me coming back nearly 15 years after this object was first thought of. I want to thank Ed Euler and John Bryan, many others, by people. Certain commitment, and I think it's the commitment that transfers over.
Let's see how The Bean was made. Chicago, maybe I'll get the one.
Have you ever been by the Cloud Gate Bean in Chicago? Have you ever wondered how it was made? This whopping 100-ton structure consists of 168 stainless steel plates welded together. It is so polished that there are no seams visible. How do the workers engineer such a feat? The bean initially started out as a computer design with its core frame supported by two large metal circles made to sit on opposite sides of the bean. Each ring was designed to move independent of one another to ensure that when temperatures changed and the bean changed shape, that the inner support would also adapt to the new changes. Cross pipes were then laid between the two support rings with careful detail placed in ensuring that the weight of the bean was equally distributed. Once the interior was complete, it was time to move the 168 stainless steel plates into place. Each plate weighed between 1,000 and 2,000 pounds. Before the plates were brought to Chicago, they were polished to within 98% of their finished state. To ensure a fine mirror finish on the plates, the polishing process was 5 stages long and ended with 800 grit sanding and rouge. The artist Anish Kapoor actually designed the bean to look like the shiny metal mercury. The plates were then laser welded together and the final polish was completed on site. The Cloud Gate bean was completed on August 28, 2005. So next time you're in Chicago, swing by the AT&T Plaza in Millennium Park and appreciate this grand work by Anish Kapoor. Thanks for watching. We hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to like.
And then, let's see. There's sculpture. There's another one here. Sculpture. So he does such a variety of objects, large and small. Really pretty. Let me see if I can find this one. Well, that's what I was looking for. Let's look at this one.
Introducing Avast One, a free all-in-one digital privacy and security service that helps you to feel
This guy thinks big. I really admire him. Now I know it's an easy one.
It doesn't matter how fast you are. It doesn't matter if you are going to walk the entire time. We got you. It's a support system.
This guy has to be a structural engineer as well as an artist.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure, like I said, he's got consultants. There it is. I think that's part of it. But this is daring. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's massive. Horn. Yeah.
When you see the person next to it, wow.
See how big it is.
Where is it, Joe? Where is it?
Somewhere in New Zealand.
Yeah.
See that for miles. I mean, you probably see it for an hour before, if you're coming up to it. If you're walking, you actually get there.
I mean, look at the figure.
Yeah.
God. This is the same man who did that awful bloody stuff, though, right?
Yeah.
In my eyes.
Yeah, he does a lot of different things.
I mean, I thought he was a psychopath with that red stuff. Any other color, I'd be okay, I think, but it just looked like raw meat and stuff. But this stuff is cool.
Yeah, like I say, he does a whole variety of things. But wait a minute, in terms of psychopath and raw meat, hold on a second. I mentioned Rembrandt painting. I'm gonna try to find that. Rembrandt, slab of beef. I'm pretty sure he was referencing this.
Huh. I mean, I know we all have many parts of us, but that doesn't look like the same artist. His red is okay here for me.
Rembrandt did this. Slaughtered Ox, Can's famous painting. He was referenced, yeah. So it's not all about beautiful flowers and things, It's like, this is part of life.
Right. I understand that, but that just, well, as Herm knows, I read creepy books, Herm, right? So
I
that red was creepy.
I don't find it creepy. It's the inside of animals that we eat, and butchers deal with this every day.
Well,
right. So
I know, but I don't know.
red
All I could think of was
red is life.
What's the guy? Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter.
Okay.
With all that red.
But red, he grew up. You saw those early mounds of powder in red. He grew up in India, where red is a prevalent color.
Oh yeah, red the dog. No.
Their faces, those powder festivals where they're throwing red powder. It's a vital, like red. He said that he's drawing on his early childhood memories of soap.
Yeah, but I didn't know.
Blood. It's really the fire. It's primary life force. Red, so he's confronting you with it in various forms. So as meat, but also as beautiful mounds, beautiful sculptures. Yeah. All right. So next artist moving on here is a woman named Zarina, and she was the first one mentioned in that article. So it's just, let's get to know her a little bit. She's more modest in her creations. A lot to do with words and.
The first piece in the show is 1961 and the last piece is 2011. So it's my whole life, and I know exactly where I was, what was happening in my life, and it's hard. It's sort of not so simple looking at one's work because it's your life in front of you.
I came across her work for the first time in Delhi, in New Delhi in India, and I was completely struck by what I saw. The type of work that felt very connected to India through its medium because it was made with paper, but that had a wonderful connection to American minimalism or European modernism.
I was born in Aligarh, a small town in northern India. We were 4 siblings, 1 brother, 3 sisters, and I'm the youngest. I knew I wanted to sort of follow in my father's footsteps, be a teacher, not be a housewife like my mother. And I always had a suitcase ready. Suppose I had to go somewhere. And then when I got married, I married a diplomat. And so I traveled with him first time, and then I never stopped. I got the feminist revolution, and I got very involved with them, and I worked with the feminist groups. There was not a single non-white woman. That's where I came in, and went to every little march which happened, and made lots of friends, and a new life started for me. I like natural materials, you know, which are close to the earth, like wood, paper, cloth. I like fragile materials which will become part of the earth, because it's like, you know, this is, completing the circle. I always think that the materials which have lasted over the centuries is terracotta and paper. And it's amazing how fragile they are and how resilient they are. I think paper is very close to skin because the skin ages, stains, keeps secrets.
Paper is actually much stronger than we think, much more resilient. And like skin, it sort of keeps things together, binds things together. I think what it retains is the sense of intimacy.
I select paper for each project. What paper, what color will work here. But I think the material also dictates to you. But this is handmade paper. It's rough, the color is natural, it's not bleached. Because until the chlorine came, there was no white paper. Most of the things which you have in my show are handmade.
We know our past because of our paper. We know about other cultures because of paper. Paper has been a link between East and West for many, many centuries. It's also a connection between past and present. If you use paper as a point of discussion and as a medium, you can cross the boundaries of time. And I think Zarina's exhibition ties into this quite well. Zarina's using techniques that tie her to the past as well as to the present.
My mother tongue is Urdu. That's where I grew up. My work is connected to language, poetry, and also poetry, I think, comes from my mother tongue. My mother tongue is a dying language. So I am also placing it historically, that there was a certain time that the language existed. There was a certain time that people like me existed, because once the India became independent and the country was divided, a certain culture was over. I think Indian and Pakistanis most of the countries are very stuck to the territory. That is the border between India and Pakistan. I just bought a very cheap atlas and drew the line. But you know, it affected people's life, you know, my life. It affected my life.
It's just a line, and yet it's this line that just, you know, affected so many millions and millions of people. Because Zarina's work is so quiet and so subtle, and there are no figures, and all there is that one line. It's not flush, it's not clean, it has a real roughness, it's very raw. One of the works that really stands out in the exhibition is a series of 36 prints called Home is a Foreign Place. It's a work that represents a very difficult moment in Zarina's life. She made it shortly after she was being threatened to have to leave her home in New York, her working space, her life space. What does that mean, losing your home? This moment where she was threatened to have to leave brought about this incredible series of works. But she chose a whole series of words that represented home. What does home mean for her?
I wrote the words first, and then the image followed. I know it's an odd way to work, but that's how I worked.
And if you think about the title, Home is a Foreign Place, it represents so much of what Zarina's work is about.
Since 21 years old, that I have never lived with my family or with my language.
Home is a confused notion for her. She represented India at the Venice Biennial, and yet she doesn't have an Indian passport. Her family, every single person who's related to her, or almost everyone, lives in Pakistan, and that country too is somewhat alien to her.
A couple of years ago, somebody wrote an article about me, and he said, she's a Muslim artist. And I said, you know, I am many other things also. I mean, I even have trouble being identified as an Indian artist, because I have lived outside India for 50 years. But I think people give you these identities. But I'm trying to say something. Basically, I'm saying something about my life, of my generation, what happened to us. Recently, somebody had interviewed me, and he said, what is your identity? And I said, my identity is of an exile. But then the thing is that I'm not the only one. I think 20th century is full of people like me, and we do have a community.
We live in a world of transient people and transient artists, but for Zarina, that was not the norm, and she was somewhat of an alien, and she wasn't immediately embraced. And what is the norm for us today was not back then. And I think that she's a precursor of a generation of transient artists. It's always very important to take down those barriers and look at the wider scheme of people, cultures, practices. And she's one artist who does that. She forces you to take down those barriers.
Homelands and borders and countries, and it does interest me. I think we are supposed to move, because human beings are nomads. Human beings are supposed to travel. You know, I think stillness is death. When you're young, you think you will never die, but you know, you sort of begin to accept the mortality, and you long for that it will happen sooner than later. You just wait for this cycle to end, to unite with the divine, because you see the light and you want your soul to be united with it, the blinding light which is in the show. I think life is not, we think it's a straight path, it isn't. I mean, every turn there's a choice where you will turn. When the journey towards God ends, the journey in God begins. This is a very small part of our existence. It's not eternity. Eternity is when we enter the other realm. But still we cling to life. That is the human in us. We don't know which is human and which is divine, but we try.
I like her. She must have read God Speaks. Any comments? Let's see, is there anything else on her? Artist prizes. One more short one. Her work is so much more small scale, more intimate, more personal in a way than Anish. In a way, he does meditative pieces. He does. But,
My name is
theme of displacement and refugees, and it's just becoming such a reality for so many people today. Just looking at, I read an article about Ukrainians who had to leave, living in Ireland now, and adjusting to the day-to-day life of being in Ireland. They're going to be there for a while, and it's just they're doing it. But what a contrast, Ukraine and Ireland. Ireland's traditionally been one of the most, even when it's doing better now economically, but even when it wasn't 20, 30 years ago, they're the most generous people. When they rank countries by money given to charity, Ireland was up there, number 1, 2, extremely generous people. And they've taken so many refugees. And the article is about how welcoming the Irish have been to these people and going out of their way to make them feel at home.
Zarina Hashmi. I feel very embarrassed saying I'm an artist. I think artist is sort of a little pompous. I often say I'm a teacher. I come to museums, I just go around. I didn't know anything about this, but it caught my eye because I'm into calligraphy. My work is very much connected to writing, to calligraphy, because I don't use color. I didn't realize that somebody could carve like this. And then I researched it a little bit, what it says. It comes from Bengal. It's not easy to carve this marble, and it's very finely carved. I think that the top is totally decorative. The vertical lines, they're alif, the first letter of the Arabic alphabet, and also Farsi and Urdu. And also the significance of alif is it's how you write Allah. As a Muslim child, they teach you to write Arabic when you're 4 years and 4 days old. And there's a little ceremony. And the first letter you learn to write is alif. There's this whole philosophy around the straight path. This is, part of a prayer. You repeat this line, God show me the straight path. It's really the center of Quran, and most of the people know it by heart. At the bottom is the inscription from the Prophet Muhammad, but it's not Quranic. It says that anybody who constructs a mosque, Allah will give him a house in the heaven. It sounds very beautiful, and it's very beautifully written. It's overlapped, so it's hard to read. I can read Muhammad, I can read letters, but I can't read the whole sentence because I don't know Arabic. I know the alphabet. The way I was taught Quran, I didn't know what it said. The person who taught me didn't teach me the translation. I was memorized the prayers and I could pray, but I didn't know what I was saying. I do read and write Urdu, which is the same alphabet. I've lived outside India almost 50 years, but I have kept up with my language because there is a cultural connection. Once you are separated from language, it's a great loss. You don't have access to your own scriptures, your poetry, your literature. So that's why emotionally I'm attached to this. I didn't even have to know what it says. Instinctively, they touch something in me.
Yeah, Serena. This one is Atul Dobia. Let's see, let's go back to this one. Find out a little bit about that person. Get this open. Zarina, she flaunts a background in mathematics. She was also featured in India's first ever national pavilion at the 54th Venice Biennale in 2011. So, all right, this one is Atul Dobia. It's another celebrated face in India when it comes to modern painting. His grand following, some of his work sell in the range of 380,000 pounds. That's about $500,000. So he's doing quite well. His artworks are themed on political ideologies in India and are coveted by numerous art fanatics across the globe. Okay.
Ready to start eating healthier? Meet Kachava. Kachava is the world's healthiest all-in-one meal shake.
Atul Dadia was born in Bombay, India on January 20, 1959, to a family that had migrated to the west coast metropolis from Kathiawar in Gujarat. Atul Dadia is one of India's most acclaimed post-colonial artists who refuses to confine himself to a box neatly labeled with a national identity. His location in India serves him as a base from which to intervene in a variety of cultural and political histories to which the post-colonial self is heir. Dadia's paintings, assemblages and sculpture installations embody a passionate, sophisticated response to the sense of crisis he feels, as an artist and as a citizen. In a transitional society damaged by the continuing asymmetries of capital yet enthused by the transformative energies of globalization. When Dadia was 10, he suffered an injury to the eye while playing with friends in a century-old village-like neighborhood of DK Wadi in Bombay. That same year, he felt in his bones the absolute conviction that he wanted to be an artist. For the next 25 years, he would be plagued by the artist's worst nightmare, the fear of impending blindness. Regardless of this, he embraced the life of the studio, committing himself to the edge of severe visual impairment, a condition eventually and permanently remedied by surgery. But by the mid-1990s, Dadia's voracious desire to record a diverse range of experiences by painterly means had already made him a front-runner of his generation of post-colonial Indian artists. A number of paintings that date to this early phase of his career attest to this potentially destabilizing yet dynamically productive tension in his consciousness. Like many of his contemporaries, Dadia enacted a radical departure from the modernist dogmas of stylistic singularity and medium specificity. He replaced these with a dazzling and extravagant multiplicity of styles and a repertoire of media among which he ranges with the zest and adroitness of an orchestral imagination. In February 2002, a brazenly ascendant Hindu right wing would orchestrate a genocide against the Muslim minority in the state of Gujarat, plunging Gujaratis of liberal persuasion, such as Dadia, into profound dejection. As one who had long subscribed to Gandhi's philosophy of compassion, mutuality and non-violence, Dadia was especially disturbed by these events that cataclysmically bookend the decade 1992 to 2002 of his life, which came to inform his art strongly. He received Gold Medal Award, Government of Maharashtra, India in 1982, Scholarship Award, French Government in 1990, Sanskriti Award in 1995, Sotheby's Prize in 1999. Civitel Ranieri Foundation Fellowship, Italy, in 1999, Rasa Award and Rasa Foundation in 2008.
For more video,
Samples of his work. Right. Scroll from one to the next. There you go. So, Mystic River, oil on canvas. Um, Scorching winds. Just giving multiple perspectives, multiple points of view. It's kind of like a collage in a way, you know, it's oil. Scorching winds is a woman with a razor blade there. Suicidal. Looks that way. She's holding a razor.
When is he born? When is he born?
I'll get to that. Let me just skip through these and I'll go back to him.
Pardon?
I'll get to that. Yeah, there it is. 59.
69.
59.
59.
So 1 and 22, right? 41 and he's in his 60s. 63.
Yeah.
Bluebird, a bulper. So he likes also using muted grays. There's Bluebird, isn't that? Is that a name?
Gandhi.
Yeah, that's Gandhi, but is Bluebird one of his names? Yeah. Welder, well, canvas. So, three Italian girlfriends, 2016. Yeah. Breaking the salt law, that was part of Gandhi's movement. The salt strikes, whatever. Oil on canvas. The funeral must be Gandhi's funeral. Funeral pyre, 1948 must be Gandhi's funeral pyre. Interesting with the Modrian, I think, side of the modern subject, maybe interesting juxtaposition. Gandhi's funeral pyre and this. maybe it's something personal, maybe that had an influence on him becoming a modern artist. Grace, enamel paint on motorized metal roller shutter with iron hooks, oil acrylic with marble dust, and oil stuck on canvas hung on iron bars. Pretty complex use of materials. And it's called Grace. So like they said, he's not, using one medium or one perspective. Dead ancestors, enamel paint on motorized metal roller shutter with iron hooks, etc. Similar. Farewell. So, Marina 2. So it seems to be dealing with themes of death and disease or social change, political upheaval. Oh, that's the last one there. Okay.
Are their names, like is their name with that skeleton with the skirt on?
The what?
Are their names of that one? What is the
Just Marina too. Don't know.
Norina, N-O-R-I?
No, Marina, M-A-R-I-N-A.
Oh, yeah,
His girlfriend, because there was a previous painting called Italian Girlfriends. Marina's an Italian name for a woman, so it could have been a girlfriend. And,
wow, that one with the scorpion on her face.
here's Modran kind of sliver skeleton. I don't know, maybe she died. I don't know what the story is behind it. Maybe she was like maybe she was a Scorpio.
Well, it's a good guess. Good guess. Pretty intense. That was
Really?
I am completely obsessed with this Arctic Cool activewear line.
How to hold this whole India in my hand? What's the role of human being? Am I just myself here today? Or am I connected to much larger? Am I a part of the cosmos? Am I a part of the much bigger thing? I live in the city of Bombay, and I think the city itself is a major influence. When you come out from your home, you're bombarded by diverse experiences. Sound and visuals and all kind of things happening around you. The way we eat, the way kind of food we eat, the religion, the festivals, the season, the weather, and everything is so different here in India. When I see different religion and their rituals, that interests me, At my home, in a Hindu house, there is lots of puja is going on. Lots of, different flowers and different pigments and different smells and all these things. How shall I kind of, talk about my people, the life here? And I'm in such an old tradition in art, otherwise in culture, thousands of dialect and languages. I started seeing things not differently, but I said, oh, this is mine. I have to grab it and just explore it in a big way. And is it possible in one single life to sort of, touch and, grab all this together in
in your art. I don't believe that only those who are educated people, they can only, understand modern or contemporary art. I have faith in all types of viewer. When I put a very well-known image, probably say iconography from Hindu religion or mythology, which people are familiar, along with that, if I sometimes juxtapose something very unusual, it creates a very hybrid sort of imagery on a one single picture plane. Like for example, when I do a painting about the myth of Ganga, the Ganges river, and use that image, which is well known. The Ganga is descending from the heaven, and Shiva is, about to take her on his head. Along with that, instead of having Ganga, I have superimposed Marcel Duchamp's nude descending staircase on it. Basically, what happens when I'm showing that work abroad, they are not familiar with the myth of Ganga, but they're familiar with the Duchamp, the audience in Europe or somewhere else. But in India, it's my mother recognizes the myth of Ganga image, but she doesn't know who is Duchamp. So I think I started enjoying doing this, creating a puzzle, sometimes baffling them, but never intention to offend them, but engage them more and more. I seriously thought about the time of India, what's happening. I mean, there is so much poverty, there is corruption, there is no great leadership, there are, tension between the communities. Often these tensions are politically motivated. And all these things, when you think, you feel extremely sad. It's my responsibility as an artist, as an Indian artist, to educate my people, not through lectures and talks and all that, through my painting. There was immense urge from within, but at the same time didn't know. And exactly, while struggling about all these things, I came across a statement by Gandhi saying, I am not a seer, a rishi, or a philosopher of non-violence. I am an artist of non-violence. And then I thought and I realized that, if you notice the structure of his ashram, is the kind of clothing he wore, the material which he chose, khadi, hand-woven cotton cloth, various movements of non-cooperation, Dandi march, lifting the pinch of salt. I said, these are all extremely conceptual idea. I think Gandhi was probably the first conceptual artist. If I see him as a conceptual artist, I know what to do with him. Painting can be a tool against injustice. Sculpture can be a tool against the violence or what you don't like. Somewhere deep down, one has felt something and one has seen those things in a visual sense, in a visually how it could be depicted. And that's why it happens, those responses come from within. In my process, I would not try to hurt fellow person's sensibility, but that doesn't stop me to say what I have to say. I mean, art cannot be generated if it has been observed and sort of been kind of, monitored. There has to be total freedom. And if there is no freedom, I don't exist. When I'm painting, and I'm struggling, and I always am aware, it's me who is painting, wow, this is fantastic, this looks great and good and all that, and then I'm stuck somewhere. And then at some point, even if I'm not stuck, some spark comes, which suggests to do certain thing in a painting, and the painting is dramatically changed, it looks fantastic. And at which moment that idea came, and from where it came? Is it because I'm a practitioner for so many years, it's natural, or is it there is someone who is also working with me, or there is someone who helps me to resolve, to solve? If I could do something good, maybe some divine grace, which has probably helped me, and there's nothing wrong in that.
Look at this one. Let's see. Okay. All right. So yeah. A little bit of a tutoria. Next one is Sheila Gadwa. Look at her in the first document. Saved it. Photograph of the person. No photograph, but look at the. She sees a variety of media stuff, cow dung, human hair, tar drums, incense, many other items were used to help her create authentic sculptures in this spell and paintings. One of her famous works include the hull. This is made by using knotted ropes swinging from car bumpers and suspended by using human hair plates. I think I got that one. Sheila Gadwa. She lives in Bangalore. Large scale installation art. What kinds of materials? Found materials, wood, metal, stone. Some examples, installations. That's the one with the car bumpers and the hair. We'll get to that. That's the whole.
I'm Sheila Gowda, artist. I live in Bangalore, in South India. I started out as a painter, but now I work with sculptural installations and also painting, but in a very different way. I am constantly kind of observing, and you observe from a personal point of view, you observe from finding something that's new or surprising, and not everything that you find becomes material for a work. But there is a moment when an idea and a material comes together. I think it's all the more relevant at this point in India to do what I'm doing. Things are changing really quickly. But I don't think what's happening now is necessarily positive. In fact, we are going backwards in many ways. So this is the studio that I built first before I built my house. And it's a custom built studio and was actually quite large when I built it, but it is shrunk. There's so much stuff in it, and also my work seems to have got bigger. And I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I don't let go of small things or big things, which I think might be useful. So having brought something home to my studio and looking at it doesn't necessarily again lead to a work. It could be that action actually takes me to something else. So these gestures of material locating or looking for one material and finding another, all these are certain processes of making or how a work comes about. For me, the formal concerns of a work is very important, and I see it as a big challenge to bring about an idea through a formal language. And that is usually underlined by the material that I use. The material also has a different context of its own, and so I try to either transform the material without changing its identity too much, and I try to weave in my own ideas in the larger sense of the work. So both of them exist side by side. At no point has my work been sculpture in the pure sense. It's always been a relationship to space or your relationship to it as a viewer, which is the case with the work Behold, which was done for the Venice Biennale first time. When I worked towards Behold, I had with me already the raw material for it, at least one part of it, which is the hair rope. I have been seeing this hair rope wound around car bumpers for a long time. And in the early 90s, when I was becoming aware of materials for their own sake, I also collected the hair rope because it was a very interesting object. I think it's used on the vehicle as a talisman. There is the question of being in control of a vehicle. At the same time, there's a great vulnerability. Each rope has probably hundreds of individuals' hair within it, of all genders, ages, communities. So it was really a coming together of people. And that was a starting point of that work. I felt that this aspect of the work would be underlined by creating a mass of it. So I joined up about 1,000 pieces of this hair rope. So the whole thing came to about 4 kilometers. The next aspect of the work was to bring in the bumpers, because there's a contrast between the organic material and industrial material like a car bumper. So the roundity of the steel bumper, the softness of the curvature of the bumper contrasted with the black of the hair was something that I said, okay, now it's a question of how do I use these two? And I thought, like, having the steel heavy elements being held up by the ropes was already a certain statement about the strength and the contrast between the two materials. So that's how Behold came about. This is an absolutely fascinating shop. I mean, the variety is immense. I basically use things which are quite abstract and which I don't feel will abuse its original use. Like these, for example, are like copper capsules which you wear around your arm or on your neck, and inside will be put a rounded piece of paper which will have some writing to ward off evil or whatever problems you might be having. But in itself, it's not a sacrilegious thing to use. So what you see here are the different stages of the evolution of this figure. But what I found was this. This one interests me more because this is somewhere between a piece of wood and possibly a representation of a person, because you see two eyes and very rudimentary ways of carving out a figure. And that's the kind of things that interest me, where form, material, and context come together. The moment of transformation. When something is very definitive, there's not much more to say about it. When you find something that's in that moment of being and not being, or becoming, I think that's far more challenging and interesting to actually appropriate for what you want to say. Art cannot be a kind of an illustration to an issue, and I don't consider art to be an agent of social change alone. It occupies other spaces as well, and I think one of it is about the exploration of language, and the exploration of language actually leads you to philosophy, to aesthetics, to cultural differences in the way we see things or in the kind of things we engage with. I think art is also about how you look at things, how you evaluate things around you.
It's fascinating listening to accomplished artists reflect on their process and their ideas about art, what it's for, the function of artists. Just also impressed with their English. They speak better than most Americans. Also, just from watching Ukraine interviews with Ukrainians, they're all speaking English really pretty well. Okay, let's see, that's something else by her. No, that's Sheila Gadwa. Our next one is Barty Care. Let me leave this open. All right, Barty Care is another contemporary Indian painter who was born in London. She moved to New Delhi to practice her art, and she made a name for herself there. Instantly, her art mainly focuses on nature and animal. She often uses the Indian bindi in her art forms to give it a feminine touch. The profit mainly comes from auctions, so celebrated pieces are sold in millions. The skin speaks a language not as old, sold for 1.1 million pounds. It's about $1.5 million. So she's done quite well.
Wow, we're crunching tons of polygons.
Brilliant ideas, powered by Hyundai Motor.
The contemporary art world is vibrant and booming as never before. It's a 21st century phenomenon, a global industry in its own right. Brilliant Ideas looks at the artist at the heart of this. Artists with the unique power to astonish, challenge and shock. Push boundaries, ask new questions, and see the world afresh. In this program, Barty Kerr. On the left,
Ideas. 2, 3.
foreign-born of Indian parents, Barty Kerr was brought up amongst the public schools and private estates of an archetypal English suburb. This was an upbringing that she rebelled against when, at the age of 23, she left London behind and moved her life and her heart east to join the other 16 million souls already living in India's capital, Delhi.
To be an outsider is very interesting because you have a very different perspective. You see things that other people don't see.
Barty Kerr's perspective is always fresh because there is something pugnacious. She's got her dukes up. She's not going to pull her punches if she has a certain perspective.
Ever since her arrival, she has been wowing the art world with her ever so slightly outsider looking in, somewhat skewed perspective on life in India and beyond.
She represents one of the best contemporary artists of India of today's times.
A classically trained painter, Barty's body of work expanded to include sculptures and installations which challenge cultural and social taboos, as Barty is only too happy to explain.
There's extreme research, there's intense thought, and there's an honesty about her which percolates her work.
I have some of my most interesting conversations with Barty Kerr. There's a great curiosity in that mind.
I was born in 1969. My parents came to the UK in 1967. So I grew up in a place called Epsom. I went to school there. And I think, yeah, growing up in the suburbs is a uniquely British experience, isn't it? And the suburbs were uniquely white, actually. Being different teaches you a lot of resilience. It also makes you understand quite clearly what you want, who you are, and it certainly gave me a very strong resolve that I would not stay in the suburbs. My father's from the Punjab. My mother's family originally is from Pakistan. When they went to England, my mum didn't speak English. When I came to India, I didn't speak Hindi. So, you know, I've sort of done the reverse of what they did. It's quite strange. I was very fortunate to have the most extraordinary art teacher at school. So he kind of opened a door for me. It was this door, it was a place of magic and alchemy and creativity, and I was absolutely convinced that I was going to do art. So I decided to go to university, and I went up to Newcastle. I saw the studios were huge compared to everything else, including actually a lot of the London colleges. I applied, I got in. So at the time I was a painter, and I was absolutely convinced that I would never get into an MA program because I wasn't making installation, and I wasn't doing photography, and I wasn't looking at video. I don't know, I just thought one day, you know what, I should just get out of here for a while. And so I wondered whether I should go to New Delhi or New York, and I flipped a coin. That's what I did.
Literally, you flipped it?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. I came to India with a 6-month visa and didn't go back.
This is the world's first adjustable socket wrench. It replaces up to 90% of tools, eliminating the
When Barty arrived in Delhi in January 1992, she stayed with friends of the family, who set her up with a studio in the center of town. Very soon after, she met her future husband, a struggling artist then, but now probably the leading contemporary artist working in India today, Subodh Gupta.
So very early into my trip in India, I had met Subodh within perhaps a month or so.
But you didn't speak Hindi and he didn't speak English.
No.
That must have been interesting.
Yeah, it was. Very interesting.
Through the mid-90s, Barty became a working artist, immersing herself in the Delhi art scene.
Modern Indian art has progressed in waves through anti-institutionalism. It hasn't grown in institutions, it's grown outside them. And she would have certainly been a part of it in the early 90s, she and Subodh both.
She was by this time married to Gupta, and they had had the first of their 2 children. They were both starting to gain some recognition. But did they ever collaborate artistically?
So and I, we've never worked together. We did one project together, I don't know, 15 years ago, and decided it was not a good idea. So, yeah, our works are very different. The subjects that we deal with, the way that we create is quite different. And it's nice, we're autonomous in our own ways. So, yeah, when I came to India, then I think for about 6 years it was quite tough for me. I really had to find my way. That wasn't about being an outsider. I started to go out to the markets, and that's what I was doing. I was sort of just going out and seeing, okay, what is India? What is this country? What's it about? What are the people like? What do women do? How does it feel on the streets?
These visits to the Delhi markets started to mold the way Bharti saw life and, more importantly, gave her the inspiration she needed.
A lot of my very early works were about the observations that I have with just a slight strangeness, which is what my work is. So the works like her suit, which are the moustaches. So I did a project where I just went out and photographed men's moustaches because it seemed to be sort of exclusively Asian trait, especially in the city of Delhi. It was also about the male gaze. So I was trying to deal with my own body in many ways. How was I to deal with the feminine in specifically masculine spaces? Yeah, the body, certainly the female body, is something that I've looked at. Also, this sort of the magical reality where the work goes off into the other side, and I made the photographs, and they were the hybrids, and they were really about who are these women who are sort of part human, part animal, part mythological. They were very early pieces. They're everything, and they're you, and they're me. I mean, I don't have a problem with the word feminist, to be honest. I think that in today's society, if you're looking at social, political, and economic truths of how half the population of the world has to deal with their day-to-day lives, I'm okay with that.
After the break, we see how Bharti's life changed when she started experimenting with different mediums.
I invest in Invesco QQQ, a fund that gives me access to NASDAQ 100 innovations like CGI. Oh, don't worry.
Become an agent of innovation with Invesco QQQ. Before investing, carefully read and consider fund investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses, and more in prospectus at Invesco.com.
Award-winning Indian artist Bharti Kaur had always been first and foremost a classically trained painter. But it was when she started to experiment with other mediums that her works became more popular.
I started moving away a little bit from the painted image, and I started making sculpture, and especially looking at objects and the ready-made. And I made this very early piece called Asian Babe, and it was partly a toy that I'd taken from my son, and it really was the first time that I took something and stuck to change the surface of an object. She also had sound. She had this little Indian doll head of those dancers that sort of move their head from left to right in this very sort of cliched Indian yes, no, like this kind of way. And I think for me that was the first time I was able, I can take this, and I can take that, and I can take that, and I can put them all together. And I think I still do that. It was exhibited by Nature Mort. Peter Nagy showed it. I think it drove him completely nuts because it sang the Macarena. Do you remember that song? Horrible song it was. After the show was over, he was like, "Thank God, I'm so like, take this away, take this work away."
Bharti had also been working with something she discovered all those years ago during her first visits to the Delhi markets.
I remember just walking through a market very similar to this in a small part of Delhi, in East Delhi, and just going to the local bindi store and just sort of looking and seeing that they had these snake bindis. And this snake bindi would look like a spermatoza. And I was really struck by how sort of hybrid it was as a form.
The bindi is a little sticky, colorful sticker, which is mostly round shaped, which we put here in the middle of our forehead. And typically in India, only married women used to wear bindis.
And so I literally just, as I was shopping and walking through, buying, just looking at the market, I bought this, 6 packets because I always buy more than one of everything. And I stuck them in my sketchbook, and that's kind of how it started.
This relationship with Bindi slowly developed to become a huge and vital component within Bharti's body of work.
Here is a person who views what is incredibly Indian with eyes that are slightly different.
For me, it's a conceptual idea for the consciousness. It's both secular and ritualistic. I don't think I was even looking at all of that when I first started making the Bindi works. It was very simple. I just picked up a ready-made, it was a sign. I thought, let me use this. Maybe 2006 is when things started and I started to make sort of international exhibitions and people saw the work. And of course, the work, The Skin Speaks a Language Not Its Own, is a piece that most people know my work by, but that was also a sort of breakthrough piece just in terms of I was aware that I had now activated a material that had its own meaning. The piece is a life-size sculpture of a dying elephant. It's covered in white bindis, and the bindis were able to, as opposed to working on a two-dimensional surface, the bindis were able to actually lift an object at the scale of an elephant and to actually make it float, but also to talk about the life and to think that the skin is perhaps like a palimpsest of many layers of history, mythology, geography, space, the idea that perhaps I was speaking or I was communicating with this elephant. So I sort of create narratives in my work, and I create them for myself because I like it.
The white elephant, it really makes you stop and think. You know, to seeing an elephant in that position is almost sad and makes it so vulnerable and makes you feel vulnerable at the same time. It is works like this that make her undoubtedly one of the main contemporary artists of the country today.
In 2015, Bharti was awarded the Chevalier des Arts for her contribution to the landscape of contemporary art.
Bharti is a really hard-working artist. She's a workaholic. She works morning, noon, night. I think her market is way bigger than one award. I think she's proven herself time and time again.
India's influenced my work profoundly. I think you see it in my practice. I don't really see how it can't. I think all artists are deeply influenced by where they live and where they work. You know, I'm a bit of a collector, so I like buying things that I think have some value, some intrinsic narrative to them. They sit for me and wait for me until I'm ready to use them.
Bharti still visits the same market.
And stopped it there. Let's see, before we end, see if we can get in. Who's left? Couples on that. Obviously not going to get everybody. And Divaki Shah, Sheila Gupta. About okay. Let's try this person. Vidish Kalat. I'll end with that.
Joe, can you ask everybody to mute, please?
Everybody mute, please. No video here. Yeah, it's family's work. Biography. Born in '74 in Mumbai. He continues to live and work there. Blah, 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 blah. He's exhibited widely in London, Berlin, all over the place. Europe, America. He's pretty well known. It's produced from NASA's open source files of a dead star's remains after a stellar explosion that occurred 11,000 light years ago. Huh. Postulates from a restless radius. It's a shape from the conic Albert projection in the Earth. Huh. hand drawn graph line beneath the image for beginning. Okay, so let's see. Ellipsis. All right, looks like we're pretty much out of time. So, any comments? I mean, what I get is contemporary Indian artists are as innovative and original and as any other contemporary artists in the world, in Europe, Asia, America, making big impact. And the ones that are drawing on their own cultures and traditions and colors and forms and interpreting them in a modern way, maybe through painting or sculpture or installations. Very articulate. And so there's a few we didn't see, but we just scratched the surface. But just to give you a sense of what's happening, definitely in the major cities even, but not always even, but mostly major cities, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore. It's been a tremendous growth of modern art. Any comments, any thoughts before we end?
Thank you, Joe. I love this last artist.
You like that person?
Yes.
I like the first one best.
First one, that's
I
right.
like the first one best also.
I think
Me
they were all
too.
just amazing, totally amazing.
Yeah.
Let me give you that, wait a minute, let me recommend that. Do you want that page, the original page, so you can, if you want to look at the other ones, we're going to pop that up again with the 10 artists.
I want to go back to the first one again.
Wait a minute.
Oh, you mean more? We didn't see all of them.
No, we didn't see all of them. I mean, I had videos, but we had, but let me pop up.
I thought we had more time.
We do.
4 o'clock.
Let me see. Here's I don't
No
mind.
class.
I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind going another half hour. Let me see. There's really only one left, so let's do that. Okay, we'll do that.
Oh, good.
Am I on screen share? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So
Yep.
yeah, Sheila Gupta's the one that's left. Okay, we'll look at her. I think. So this one you like, Don? This person?
No, I think I like Kala.
Right. Yeah, that's him.
The first one we saw, wasn't that Colette?
No, that was I forget his name.
Oh.
Or is Rakib Shah?
Oh yeah, Shaw. Shaw was the one I liked.
He's pretty wild, that guy. I know.
Well, it's amazing the way he creates the art.
I know. Yeah, it's totally original.
Completely different. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that.
I think he just discovered all that himself. It's just really amazing. Okay, so Shilpa Gupta was born in '76. He lives and works in Mumbai. She received her BFA in sculpture from in India. Her mediums range from manipulative found objects to video, interactive computer-based installation, and performance. She's interested in human perception and how information, visible or invisible, gets transmitted and internalized in everyday life. All right.
Joe, is this, isn't she married to a Gupta? Barti Kher, his name's Gupta.
Yeah, she was married to a Gupta, but that's not, this is a woman. Oh, so that other Gupta is not here, it's not listed, her husband. Yeah, and he's apparently very well known, but he didn't show up here in these, yeah. Metal gate.
Is there supposed to be a picture?
This is an installation.
I see nothing except gray.
Gray, yeah.
It's gray.
I've got the share on. Are you seeing a gate?
It's just gray with, it looks like maybe some lettering behind it.
Anybody seeing a gate that's swinging back and forth? Anyone else?
No,
No gate.
Oh, okay. So I see it on mine. I have it on. I have it on. Let me do stop share, then do it again. So it's been a minute. This thing just started again. Share.
There it is. Yes. Yes.
I don't know. For me, gated communities, letting you in, letting you out. Certain people can come in, certain come out. It's like this torn down area. Maybe the gate's letting you into some privileged area. I don't know, possibly. One more. So the one everybody liked is Rakib Shah, R-A-Q-I-B, if you want to look him up again, R-A-Q-I-B-S-H-A-W, Rakib Shah. Yeah, he was my favorite along with Anish Kapoor, who I really like.
He's so amazingly imaginative. I mean, really.
Rakib, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look at him. I'll do another, put his name on YouTube, see if we find another video of his work. Let's just look at, see if this one's worth.
If you want to ace your paper, download Grammarly. Are you?
My name is Shilpa Gupta. I work with images, sound, video, things that we see around ourselves, objects from everyday life. I'm interested in perception and the way people look at things and define them and then work around these definitions.
Shilpa Gupta is a Mumbai-based artist whose recent artwork has explored the ways that international borders are simply constructs and often full of contradiction. But this isn't quite the history or geography lesson you might expect. Through objects and interviews, she weaves metaphors of the ways that state lines are much younger than the culture that exists on either side.
Borders are part of a larger construct, which is a borderland. And that while at one hand they construct the nation, at the same time they also subvert the nation.
Shilpa Gupta's artwork is on display at Vadera Art Gallery in New Delhi. It's the first time these works have been presented in India.
I'm interested in everyday life, so I look at, if you look at the body of work and if you walk through it, the stories, I've collected stories which people have narrated over interviews, over things that have been said, things that haven't been said, things that have been recorded or things that stay unrecorded. So one is not as if projecting a opinion, but one is looking as a bystander and allowing life and allowing things which go by to inform you something about themselves.
Throughout the exhibition are displays where materials from the India-Bangladesh border are reimagined to represent the fuzzy reality of the division.
There's a kind of knowledge, a kind of history, a kind of affiliation we are comfortable with, but then there exists a lot of things that fall outside of it. So one is sort of bringing the things which are probably eliminated or not looked upon or one is not comfortable with to sort of slip into these spaces. And what you have inside is, say, a Dhakai sari which has been shredded, or you have bone china that has been crushed, or you have fog which is sort of disembodied. And why are they treated like this?
See if we can find any more of the Rakib Shah. One thing that all of them are so articulate with the English language. You know, Americans and almost just almost everybody uses the word sorta, kinda, and like in almost every sentence. And they're throwaway words that don't add anything to the meaning of a sentence. It just becomes kind of like, see, I'm doing it kind of like, waters down the impact of what you're saying when you're always saying kind of, sort of. It's like you're not totally committed to what you're saying, but everyone uses it. One thing that struck me about every one of these artists, nobody is using those words. And they're very clear, very direct, very succinct, no ums and hemming and hawing, and just very articulate English, and better spoken English than the average American. So I'm just impressed with that. I have an ear for how language is used. Ooh, let's look at that in the studio. Oh, here's one. That's just like, we didn't see this one. I don't think.
The first thing is the backgrounds. Over here, we are looking at an early summer sky, and the early summer sky is what we see in The Last Horse King and The Blossom Gatherer. So it's the background in oil that goes first. And then the composition, which basically consists of line drawings that are projected onto the surface and then lined. And by lining, I mean that stained glass paint is poured over the initial line drawing. So there is almost a cofferdam, a situation where paint is poured in and it can't really escape because it is within the confines of the stained glass liner. So these are tiny dams. I would say the third stage. This is a tiny section that yet remains to be painted and a part of broken rocks. The consistency of the various paints have to be absolutely perfect, otherwise you just won't get the desired effect, because as you can see, the two materials absolutely dislike each other, and the black is much stronger than the white. So taking advantage of the agitation between the materials, it's a lovely idea to drag them out so that you maintain the agitation, but you actually use it to your absolute benefit. And then for very, very fine details, you use the much, much thinner porcupine quill, which is almost more fragile than the tip of a needle. Now, the reason why glitter and crystals is because not only embellishment, but they act as signifiers. And for that, there is the lovely array of crystals that we have here. So you have, let's say, the armband, and you pour teeny bits of glue and a bit of beeswax on the end of a quill, because beeswax does very nicely pick up the very, very tiny crystals. So you deposit it where it needs to go.
All right.
That's
Cool.
similar to cloisonne,
Yeah. That's
kind of
the
like
fun.
the cloisonne procedure.
He just said he did here and there.
I know. This guy's, I mean, he's totally original, but he's using so many different techniques of stained glass that just drawing on, and then integrating it with Renaissance art and modern art. It's like incredible imagination and technical skills. Yeah, really impressive. So Rakib Shah, I'm sure there's more on him, or more artwork on him. If you want to look it up, look at him some more. All right, so fascinating what's going on in India. Really impressive. And there's more we could have looked at.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I saw there's this child prodigy. Maybe if I see him during the week, I'll do it next time. This Indian child is, well, this is several years ago. The child was like 7 or 8. Who was doing abstract paintings and selling them at ridiculous prices. It was a, I think, child from Delhi or something. Yeah. I went to, when I was living in India, and I went to some galleries in Pune, was impressed. It's a good art scene in Pune. In Mumbai. All right, great. So like I said, next time I'll focus on blind artists. That should be fascinating. And then
Thank you. This was great.
Down the road, I think also, I did Black African American artists, but I think I'll do a session on African artists, Black African.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's a country. Yeah. All righty, so
you're doing
happy rest of Labor Day.
Yes.
Very, very, very enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I'm so glad I got on.
Yeah, me too.
Joe, I wanted to share something, but I can at another time but you're mentioning blind artists. Well,
blind
Diana LePage is near blind.
Oh, she is.
She's a sculptor and
All
a
right,
picture,
that's-
both.
yeah, dying on the page is going blind. That's true. Australian.
Yeah.
She's,
Yeah.
she's an Australian follower, Mayor Baba, who met Mayor Baba and a fine artist, and so she's losing her eyesight. Yeah.
But her sculpture was not Mayor Baba.
No, right. Okay.
Except I've seen giant things she's done.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that.
And your comments about language, most interesting. I have to think a lot more about that. Why we lack the precision and the definitiveness.
There's this Harvard linguistic scholar, I forget his name, and he's written books on the degradation of American English language and everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a topic that fascinates me. One of the things he quotes from is, if you read the letters from Civil War soldiers, most of whom didn't even go to high school. They're really articulate and well-constructed sentences, smart. And then he compared them with letters home from Vietnam War vets. So the language is gone. But I also noticed that this use of kind of, sort of, I wonder if it's like people are hesitant to take a strong stand on something, and kind of sort of gives you a way out. I'm not totally committed to what I'm saying. And if I say kind of, sort of, I can always change my mind. It might have something to do with fear of being politically incorrect in this country. I don't know. But I've also noticed that highly successful people don't use those words. And I've listened to, say, for instance, Olympic gold medal winners discuss, they've been interviewed, and they rarely say kind of, sort of. Like, you wouldn't, it's like where I hear some NFL coaches start using that a lot. And it's almost like they're saying, well, we kind of want to win the Super Bowl. You're going to say that you're not going to win the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. If you kind of, sort of want to win the Super Bowl, you just I want to win the Super Bowl.
Or I'm going to win the Super Bowl.
We're going to win the Super Bowl. It's not kind of, but it's in every sentence for so many.
I don't hear it. I don't hear it in my life. No, so I don't know. But the thing is, they were taught English by the English.
Right. Exactly.
Yes, so right there. And did America want to imitate England? No, no way. No way.
But the language in this country was actually more precise. It's degraded over.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely degraded. For television and then the internet now and cell phones.
Joe, I think these are very clear thinking people also. And when you have your thoughts clear in your mind, you don't need to use that kind of language.
That's true. Like the more clarity you have in your thinking, the more.
Or if you're not hiding something. I mean, politically in this country, there's a lot of kind of, sort of.
I lived in England for 8 years, and I was impressed with the way English is spoken compared to here. But anyway, just a fascinating topic. But if you don't hear kind of, sort of, maybe you're not listening to see if
I hear it from you. Yeah.
I know it's got. I see it in myself too. I've tried to eliminate it as much as possible, but it comes out. All right, great. Have a good rest of.
I like them all, actually. I liked all these. It was quite amazing. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Happy Labor Day. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.